The elevator ride was silent. Alana stood beside Malcolm, her hands clasped in front of her, eyes forward. Vanessa leaned against the mirrored wall, her reflection smirking back at her as if she'd already won something unspoken. When they reached Malcolm's penthouse, the doors opened to a wide expanse of glass and city lights. He stepped out first, tossing the envelope onto the marble kitchen counter. Alana glanced at the photographs, her brow furrowing. "Malcolm, that second one, it's tonight. He's here." "I know," he said flatly. Vanessa sauntered in, her heels clicking against the floor. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Maybe he's just a reporter, or some private investigator digging up old gossip." Malcolm turned on her sharply. "And how would you know that?" For a flicker of a second, her smile faltered. "I don't. I'm just saying." "No," Malcolm cut in. "You're avoiding." Alana stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Malcolm. I think she knows more than she's telling you." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Careful, nurse. You don't know me." "I know enough," Alana replied calmly, though her pulse was racing. The air between them was tight, charged. Then Malcolm's phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up, expecting David, but the caller ID showed an unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Cole," a man's voice said, deep and unfamiliar. "I know who killed your wife. And I know you're not safe with the people in that room." The line went dead. Malcolm's gaze shifted from Alana to Vanessa, both watching him, both unreadable. The valet's voice sliced through the warm hum of the lobby. "Sir, there's something you need to see." Malcolm turned, still feeling the static in the air from the silent war between Vanessa and Alana. The valet's face was pale, his posture stiff, as he held a sleek black envelope between gloved fingers. "No courier. No name. Someone just left it and walked away," the valet said. Malcolm's brows knit as he crossed the polished marble, the sound of his shoes echoing in the high-ceilinged space. He took the envelope, the paper cool and heavier than it should have been. Vanessa's heels clicked closer behind him. "What is it?" she asked, her tone carefully light, but too smooth, the kind of smooth that slid over sharp edges. He tore it open. 2 photographs slid into his hand. The first, his breath caught, was of Liana. His wife. Taken the day before she died. She was standing just outside the same penthouse building, sunlight catching in her hair, speaking to a man whose face was obscured by the brim of a cap. The second photo was worse. The same man, wearing the same jacket, standing across the street from the building. Tonight. Malcolm's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching. The air in the lobby felt suddenly too thin. "Malcolm?" Alana's voice was soft but laced with concern. She had moved closer, her green dress a stark contrast to the black and gold tones of the lobby. Vanessa leaned in, her perfume drifting into his space. "That's strange," she murmured. No gasp. No questions. Just that careful, measured word. He turned his head slowly toward her. "Strange?" Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "I'm just saying, could be nothing. People watch buildings all the time. Photographers, reporters." "No," Malcolm's voice was low, unshakable. "This is not nothing." For a moment, their eyes locked, his searching for any crack in her mask, hers holding steady, like glass. Alana glanced between them, sensing more in their exchange than either would admit. "Maybe we should take this upstairs," she suggested, her tone gentle but firm. Malcolm broke the stare first, nodding once. "Yeah. Upstairs." When the doors slid open to the penthouse, Malcolm strode straight to the marble counter in the open-plan living space and set the photos down. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows spilled the Lagos skyline into the room, gold and silver lights shimmering against the night. The air smelled faintly of the orchids arranged in tall glass vases along the wall, Liana's favorite, a detail Malcolm never changed. Alana picked up the second photo, studying the man's posture. "This is from tonight?" "Yes," Malcolm said. Her brow furrowed. "Then he's still nearby." "I know." Vanessa wandered to the bar, pouring herself a glass of white wine without asking. "If this is what's keeping you up at night, maybe you need more sleep, not more drama." Malcolm's head snapped toward her. "And how exactly would you define drama, Vanessa?" "Anonymous photographs of my wife and a man who is apparently watching my building." She sipped, unbothered. "I'd define it as you overreacting." Alana set the photo down carefully, her eyes narrowing just a fraction as she looked at Vanessa. "I don't think he's overreacting. Whoever sent this wanted him to know he's being watched, and they wanted him to remember his wife." The room went still. Vanessa's gaze slid over Alana with slow precision, like someone measuring a threat. "And you seem very invested for someone who only met him recently." "I care about my patients," Alana said evenly, though her pulse had spiked. Malcolm's voice cut through the tension. "Enough. Both of you." He turned away from them, bracing his hands on the counter and staring out at the skyline. The city lights blurred slightly in his vision, not from drink, but from the sudden weight pressing into his chest. He felt Alana's presence before she spoke. She had come to stand beside him, her voice low. "You don't have to handle this alone, you know." His eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them, the same spark from hospital, only now charged with something heavier, more dangerous. Malcolm held Alana's gaze a moment longer, the faintest hint of relief flickering in his eyes before he looked away. "I'm not used to letting anyone in," he admitted. "You don't have to decide that tonight," Alana said softly. "Just, know it's an option." Behind them, the sound of Vanessa's wine glass clicking against the counter broke the moment. "Well, since we're done with amateur detective hour, I'll be going," she said, sliding her clutch under her arm. "Unless, of course, you'd prefer I stay and keep you company." The suggestion was so blatant it made Alana's stomach tighten. Malcolm's jaw hardened. "Good night, Vanessa." Her lips curved into something between a smirk and a pout. "Fine. But you know, Malcolm, some people are more loyal than you give them credit for." Alana caught the way Vanessa's gaze lingered on her for just a second too long before she turned and strutted toward the elevator. When the doors finally closed behind her, the penthouse seemed to exhale. Malcolm stayed at the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city. Alana hesitated before stepping closer. "She doesn't like me," she said plainly. "She doesn't like anyone who takes my attention," Malcolm replied without looking at her. "That's not your problem, that's hers." Alana gave a faint smile. "Still, doesn't make it easier." Finally, he turned to face her. The tension in his shoulders had eased, but there was still something simmering beneath the surface, not just from the photographs, but from the presence Vanessa brought into the room. "You've had a long day," he said. "Let me get you something to drink." The kitchen island gleamed under soft pendant lights. Malcolm poured 2 glasses of chilled sparkling water from a crystal bottle, sliding one toward her. Alana accepted it, her fingers brushing his. It was a small thing, but it sent a subtle current through the air between them. "You're not as untouchable as you pretend," she said, watching him over the rim of her glass. "And you're not as guarded as you think," he countered. Her lips curved. "Maybe we're both a little too curious for our own good." They moved to the seating area by the window, the Lagos skyline spread beneath them like a blanket of gold. Conversation came easier now, lighter, winding through bits of humor and quiet admissions. Malcolm talked about his first business deal, Alana shared stories from her childhood in Ibadan. But beneath it all, there was an undercurrent neither of them could ignore. The way his eyes lingered a moment too long when she laughed. The way her voice softened when she asked about his wife, and he let her in just far enough to glimpse the grief without drowning in it. It was after midnight when Alana stood to leave. "I should go," she said, though her tone made it sound more like a question than a decision. Malcolm rose with her, his gaze holding hers in a quiet challenge. "Or you could stay. Just, stay. No expectations." She hesitated. She thought of Vanessa's sharp gaze, of the photographs still lying on the counter, of the man in the street. And she thought of the way Malcolm looked right now, guarded, yes, but with that same spark from the first night they met. Slowly, she nodded. They didn't rush it. Malcolm showed her the guest room, though she knew neither of them intended for her to sleep there. They talked a little longer, the conversation dipping into silences that felt comfortable, almost necessary. When he finally stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, it was with the kind of care that spoke louder than words. His touch was steady, warm, and respectful, an unspoken question in the air. She answered by closing the space between them. The kiss was unhurried, the kind that didn't need to prove anything, just to be real. His hand found the small of her back, hers rested against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The city lights spilled across the room, painting them in gold. Later, as they sat together on the sofa, the skyline before them and the tension in their bodies eased, Alana realized that this was the most at peace she'd felt in months. Malcolm, for all his walls, had let her see something rare. And neither of them knew that downstairs, in the shadow of the building, the same man from the photographs was watching, and he wasn't alone. The morning broke soft and golden over Lagos, the first rays of sunlight spilling across the penthouse floor like warm silk. Malcolm had been awake for hours. He stood by the window, a mug of black coffee in one hand, his gaze fixed on the street below. The night's photographs were still on the counter behind him, their images burned into his mind. Alana emerged from the guest room. She'd slept there after all, though he knew neither of them had slept deeply. She wore a simple cream blouse and dark trousers, her hair pulled back neatly, but there was something about the softness in her eyes when she saw him that sent a quiet heat through him. "Morning," she said, her voice still husky from sleep. He gave a faint smile. "Morning. Coffee?" She nodded, and he poured her a cup, sliding it across the counter. They stood in silence for a while, sipping coffee, watching the city wake. It should have been peaceful, but Malcolm's mind was working. "I need to find out who he is," Malcolm said finally. "The man in the photo?" "Yes. And why he was with Liana that day. And why he's here now." Alana set her cup down. "Do you think Vanessa knows something?" Malcolm's jaw tightened. "I think Vanessa knows a lot of things she doesn't say." A knock at the door broke the conversation. Malcolm crossed the room, pulling it open to find David, his secretary, holding a sleek tablet and wearing his usual crisp suit. "There's something you should see," David said without preamble. On the tablet screen was security footage from the building's front entrance, time-stamped from just before midnight. The man from the photographs was there, leaning against a lamppost, watching the doors. But in the next clip, Malcolm froze. Vanessa walked out of the building, alone. She didn't glance around, didn't look startled. She walked right past the man, and he didn't even try to hide. Alana stepped closer, her breath catching. "She knows him." Malcolm didn't answer, but his mind was already moving, connecting pieces he didn't want to fit together. "I'll handle it," he told David. Later that day, Alana returned to the hospital for her shift, but the conversation with Malcolm lingered in her thoughts. She hated leaving him with that tension in his eyes, tension she now knew wasn't just grief, but suspicion. That evening, she got a message from him, "Need to talk. Tonight." When she arrived at the penthouse, he was waiting by the window again. The skyline was brighter now, the city alive. "I'm not going to let this man, or Vanessa, blindside me again," he said quietly. "But I need you to trust me. And to stay close." She stepped toward him, the distance between them shrinking until his presence surrounded her. "I'm here," she said simply. The look they shared then was not just attraction, it was a promise, quiet but unshakable. And outside, on the street below, the man in the photographs lit a cigarette and watched the lights in Malcolm's penthouse window. Malcolm stepped away from the window, the city's glow falling behind him, and walked to where Alana stood. The weight of the day hung between them, but so did something else, something warmer, quieter, that neither of them had tried to name. "You've barely said a word since I got here," Alana said softly. "I'm thinking," Malcolm replied, his voice low. "About what I saw, about what it means if Vanessa's connected to him. And about what happens next," Alana guessed. He met her gaze. "I can't move blindly. Not with you here. He hesitated, searching for the right word. "Important to me." Her chest tightened, not from surprise, but from the quiet certainty in his tone. "Then let me help," she said. "Not just as a nurse. As someone you trust." His lips curved faintly, the kind of smile that didn't come easy. "You already do." They moved to the sofa, the same place they'd sat the night before. Conversation drifted into pockets of silence, not uncomfortable but loaded with awareness. At one point, her hand brushed his as she reached for her glass, and he didn't pull away. Outside, rain began to patter against the windows, soft at first, then heavier, wrapping the city in a silver curtain. The storm's low rumble seemed to press the world closer around them. "Storm season," Alana murmured, looking out at the rain. "Storms never last forever," Malcolm said, though they both knew he wasn't talking about the weather. Hours later, when the rain finally eased, Alana stood to leave. Malcolm walked her to the door, stopping just before she stepped into the hallway. "Alana," he said. She turned, her eyes meeting his in the warm light spilling from the penthouse. "Stay close. Until I figure this out." She nodded. "You won't have to ask twice." Neither of them noticed the dark sedan idling at the corner, headlights dimmed. Inside, the man from the photographs spoke quietly into a phone. "She's here again," he said. A pause. Then, a woman's voice, smooth, sharp, and unmistakable, "I know. Keep watching." The following evening, the penthouse was quieter than usual. Malcolm had cancelled his dinner meeting, choosing instead to stay in and think. The photographs were still on the marble counter, but now they were joined by a printed copy of the building's security footage, Vanessa passing the man without hesitation. The more Malcolm stared at it, the less it looked like coincidence. A soft chime broke the silence. The private elevator doors slid open, revealing Alana in a dark teal dress that made her skin glow under the soft lighting. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me," Malcolm said, a faint smile playing at his lips. "I told you, you don't get rid of me that easily," she replied, stepping inside. They shared dinner in the open-plan kitchen, conversation light at first but slowly edging toward the tension in the room. "I saw Vanessa at the hospital today," Alana said, her fork pausing midway. Let's just say she made it clear she doesn't like me." Malcolm's jaw clenched. "What did she say?" "Nothing direct. But she didn't have to. She's always been protective," he said, though his tone carried more weight than the word alone suggested. Later, they moved to the living room, the city lights glittering beyond the windows. Alana sat close, her hand brushing his on the sofa cushion. Before either of them could speak, Malcolm's phone buzzed. "Unknown number." He answered. "Mr. Cole," a deep, unfamiliar male voice said. "You're looking in the wrong direction. The person who killed your wife is much closer than you think." The line went dead. Malcolm sat still, the phone heavy in his hand. Alana leaned forward, reading his expression. "What did they say?" He hesitated. "Nothing useful. It wasn't a lie, exactly. But telling her now, with no proof, felt dangerous." He'd protect her from the truth until he could be certain. But in his mind, one image stayed sharp, Vanessa walking past that man without fear. Malcolm set his phone down on the coffee table, the glow from the screen fading. The room felt heavier now, though Alana's presence cut through it like a soft light. "You're doing that thing again," she said gently. "What thing?" "Carrying the weight of the world on your own shoulders." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "And you're doing that thing where you try to take half of it from me." "Maybe I just don't like seeing you sink under it," she said, her voice low. He turned toward her fully, the golden light from the lamps softening the sharp lines of his face. "You've been here a short time, but somehow you've anchored me," he admitted. "I didn't think that was possible anymore." Her eyes searched his, and for a moment, the tension between them was more than unspoken attraction, it was trust, raw and fragile. She reached for his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. Neither spoke for a moment, letting the silence speak for them. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the streets below glistened. "I'm not going anywhere," Alana said finally. "Not until you tell me to." "I won't," Malcolm replied, and the quiet conviction in his tone made her pulse quicken. They sat like that for a while, the world beyond the windows fading away. Eventually, she leaned against him, his arm coming around her in a protective embrace. They didn't talk about Vanessa. They didn't talk about the man outside. Tonight was theirs, and for a few precious hours, danger had no place in it. But in the shadows of the street below, that same man in the photographs lit another cigarette, exhaling slowly as his eyes stayed fixed on the penthouse windows. And this time, he wasn't alone. The next evening, the air above Lagos was crisp and faintly scented with rain from the day before. Malcolm had texted Alana mid-afternoon, "Meet me on the rooftop." 8 p.m. When she stepped out of the elevator into the private rooftop lounge of his building, the city stretched around them in glittering arcs. Strings of warm lights lined the low seating areas, and potted palms swayed gently in the breeze. Malcolm stood near the edge, hands in his pockets, looking out over the skyline. Tonight he wore a black open-collar shirt and tailored trousers, the easy elegance somehow making him look even more commanding. "You didn't say what this was about," Alana said, walking toward him. "I wasn't sure I would," he admitted. "But the thing about rooftops is, they make you feel like you can say things you wouldn't in a boardroom." They stood side by side, the hum of the city below like a distant heartbeat. "I met Liana when I was barely more than a kid," Malcolm began, his voice quieter than usual. "She believed in me when all I had was ideas and debt. We didn't have long, and I've spent years telling myself her death was just a cruel accident. But now?" Alana prompted gently. He shook his head. "Now I'm not sure. And if it wasn't? I don't know if I can live with how blind I've been." Alana reached for his hand, her fingers curling around his in quiet solidarity. "Grief has a way of hiding the truth from us," she said. "But you're seeing more now. That's what matters." He looked at her then, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. Not just attraction, but understanding. The moment stretched, warm and fragile, until the sound of footsteps broke it. Vanessa stood a few feet away, wearing a fitted gold evening gown and an expression that didn't bother hiding her displeasure. "Well," she said smoothly, "isn't this cozy?" Alana stiffened, but Malcolm didn't move his hand from hers. "What do you want, Vanessa?" "Oh, nothing," she said, smiling like a knife. "Just enjoying the view. Seems I'm not the only one." They watched her walk away, the click of her heels fading into the night. But Alana could feel the heat of her gaze still lingering, a warning that the rooftop wasn't the only place where confessions might be made. The echo of Vanessa's heels finally faded into the hum of the city. Alana let out a slow breath, as if only now realizing how tightly she'd been holding it. "She's not going to stop," Alana murmured. Malcolm's gaze stayed fixed on the skyline. "No. But she's not the one I'm worried about. Her brow furrowed. Then who? He hesitated, then shook his head. Not tonight. Tonight isn't about her. They moved to a low seating area beneath the string lights. The cushions were soft, the table between them holding a bottle of champagne and 2 crystal flutes. Malcolm poured without asking, handing her a glass before taking his own. Something good, he said, lifting his glass. She arched a brow. That's vague. It's also safe, he replied, a faint smile breaking through the heaviness in his expression. Their glasses touched, the soft chime ringing briefly against the background noise of the city. As they talked, the conversation began to wander, away from danger and suspicion, into lighter memories and small confessions. Malcolm spoke about his first failed business venture, the one that taught him more than any success. Alana told him about her first day as a nurse and how she'd almost fainted at the sight of her first patient's wound. The laughter between them was easy, unforced. At one point, she shifted closer, the cool night breeze making her lean subtly toward his warmth. He didn't move away. Instead, his arm rested along the back of the sofa, close enough for his fingertips to brush her shoulder. They sat like that for a while, not needing to fill the silences. Down below, Lagos moved on without them, traffic flowing, music spilling from rooftop bars, the world still turning. Malcolm looked at her then, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. You've changed the way I see this place, he said quietly. And, the way I see myself. Her breath caught, though she managed a small smile. That's a lot for someone you've known only a short time. It's enough, he replied, and the sincerity in his voice left no room for doubt. They didn't kiss. Not tonight. But when she finally stood to leave, the warmth in his gaze followed her all the way to the elevator, and long after the doors closed. And somewhere, far below, a dark figure leaned against a street lamp, watching the rooftop lights flicker off one by one. The rooftop felt quieter now, the hum of the city a soft, distant murmur under the warm glow of the hanging lights. Malcolm remained seated, watching Alana as she moved toward the railing. Her dark teal dress swayed lightly in the breeze, catching bits of gold from the lamps overhead. You're not going to tell me who you're worried about, she said without turning around. Not tonight, he replied, his voice calm but final. She glanced over her shoulder. You don't trust me? His answer came without hesitation. I trust you more than I trust anyone. That's why I won't put you in the middle of this until I know what I'm dealing with. Alana stepped closer, resting her forearms on the railing beside him. You've been alone with this for a long time, haven't you? He gave a low, humorless laugh. Feels like forever. Then maybe it's time you let someone stand beside you. Even if it's messy. Even if it's dangerous. Their eyes met, and something in his softened. Not because the danger had lessened, but because, for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was standing in it alone. A gust of wind sent a shiver through her, and without thinking, Malcolm shrugged off his jacket, draping it over her shoulders. The faint scent of his cologne rose with the warmth of the fabric, and Alana found herself holding his gaze a moment too long. Better? He asked. Warmer, she said, her voice quieter than before. They stood there like that, side by side, for what felt like an unmeasured stretch of time, not speaking, just listening to the city breathe beneath them. Finally, Alana broke the silence. What happens if you find out the truth, and it's worse than you think? Malcolm's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. Then I deal with it. And I protect the people who matter. She didn't have to ask who those people were. From the shadows of the rooftop stairwell, a pair of eyes watched them. Not Vanessa's, not the man from the photographs, but someone else. They lingered for only a moment before disappearing into the night, leaving nothing but the faint echo of retreating footsteps. The morning after the rooftop meeting, Malcolm was in his study, sifting through contracts he wasn't really reading. His mind kept drifting to Alana, the warmth of her hand in his, the look in her eyes when she said she wasn't going anywhere. A soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Vanessa stepped inside, her gold dress replaced by a cream silk blouse and tailored trousers. Her smile was polished, practiced. "We should talk," she said. Malcolm's eyes narrowed slightly. "About?" She placed a small envelope on his desk. "Dinner. Friday night. I'm hosting. And before you start, yes, Alana is invited." He leaned back in his chair. "You expect me to believe you suddenly want to play hostess to someone you've barely been civil to?" Vanessa's smile didn't falter. "You're right. I haven't been warm. But maybe I should try. After all, she's important to you." Her tone made the words sound like a challenge, but Malcolm said nothing. He simply picked up the envelope, turning it in his hands. That evening, Malcolm told Alana about the invitation. She was in her small apartment kitchen, hair tied up, still in scrubs from her shift. "Vanessa invited me," she repeated, eyebrows raised. "That's what it looks like," Malcolm said, his voice carefully neutral. "And you think this is, what? A peace offering?" "I think it's a test," he replied. Alana exhaled slowly, leaning against the counter. "Then I guess I should study." Friday night arrived quickly. Vanessa's home, an opulent, glass-walled mansion on the edge of the city, was lit like a stage. Inside, the air smelled of expensive perfume and polished wood. Malcolm and Alana walked in together, and immediately, eyes turned their way. Vanessa appeared at the top of the sweeping staircase, every inch the perfect hostess. But her gaze, when it landed on Alana, was sharp enough to cut glass. Vanessa descended the staircase slowly, her hand gliding along the banister, her gown, deep sapphire tonight, shimmering in the chandelier light. "Malcolm," she greeted smoothly, brushing a kiss against his cheek. Her eyes slid to Alana. "And you must be our special guest." Alana returned a polite smile. "Thank you for inviting me. I believe in getting to know the people who matter," Vanessa said, her tone silky, ambiguous. The dinner table was set for 10, a glittering expanse of crystal, silver, and white porcelain. Guests mingled in small clusters, politicians, business magnates, and a few faces Alana recognized from magazines. Malcolm stayed near her, introducing her with quiet pride. But every time Alana glanced toward Vanessa, she found her watching, and not with friendliness. Once everyone was seated, Vanessa took the head of the table. "Let's begin," she said, her smile fixed. "I thought tonight, we might play a little game. Something to break the ice." It was harmless enough at first, questions about favorite travel destinations, dream meals, and childhood memories. Then Vanessa's gaze landed on Alana. "Tell us," Vanessa said sweetly, "how exactly did you meet Malcolm? And what made you think you could capture his attention so quickly?" The room went quiet. Alana kept her tone calm. "We met at the hospital where I work. And as for capturing his attention, you'd have to ask him." Malcolm's voice was steady. "I noticed her because she's worth noticing. And she's earned my respect." A flicker of something, frustration, maybe, crossed Vanessa's face before her smile returned. How charming. The meal continued, but the tension lingered. Alana answered questions politely, smiled when required, but she could feel the undercurrent. This wasn't a dinner, it was an interrogation. By the time dessert arrived, Vanessa leaned back in her chair, her tone just light enough to pass for casual. "You know, Malcolm, Liana would have been fascinated by your new friend. She had such a good instinct for people." It was a subtle knife, but Malcolm caught it. His eyes cooled. "And I have a good instinct for knowing when a dinner is over." The night air outside Vanessa's mansion was cooler than inside, but it still carried the faint hum of the city. Malcolm held the door for Alana as they stepped out, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine," she replied, though her tone had that clipped edge that told him otherwise. "You didn't deserve that," he said. "She invited you just to test you." Alana managed a small smile. "Then I guess I passed." Malcolm's expression softened. "You did more than that. You handled her better than most people could." The driver opened the back door of the car, and once they were inside, the city lights began sliding past the tinted windows. For a few minutes, they sat in silence. Then Alana turned to him. "She's jealous," Alana said simply. Malcolm's jaw tightened. "She has no reason to be. Vanessa's complicated. She's my late wife's sister, and she thinks that gives her a permanent claim on my life. But it's more than that, isn't it?" He met her eyes. "Yes. And I don't like what it means for you." They arrived back at Malcolm's penthouse, the skyline glowing beyond the glass walls. Inside, Alana removed her wrap and sank into the sofa while Malcolm poured them both a drink. "I think she knows something," Alana said finally. "About Liana's death." Malcolm froze mid-pour, then set the glass down. "Why do you say that?" "It's in her eyes when she talks about her. Like she's remembering something, or hiding something." He crossed the room, handing her the drink. "I've been trying to avoid that thought for years," he admitted. "But lately, I can't." From the street below, parked in the shadows, a dark sedan sat idling. Inside, the man from the photographs had a clear view of the penthouse windows. He lifted a phone to his ear. "She's in," he said. A woman's voice, Vanessa's, answered. "Good. Now we watch." Malcolm set his drink aside and joined Alana on the sofa, the city lights bathing the room in soft gold and silver. For a moment, they just sat there, the quiet between them full but unspoken. "You didn't have to defend me tonight," she said. "Yes, I did," he replied. "I told you before, you matter to me. That means I don't let anyone try to tear you down." Her gaze lingered on his, the sincerity in his voice making her chest feel tight. "You're not as untouchable as you like people to think, you know." A corner of his mouth lifted. "Only with you." She leaned back into the sofa, and he shifted slightly closer, his arm resting along the back. The warmth of his presence was grounding, his scent subtle but distinct, cedar and something darker. "I don't know what happens next," she said softly. "But I'm not going anywhere." He studied her face, memorizing the resolve in her eyes. "Then neither am I." They didn't cross the fragile line between them tonight, but their closeness carried the weight of a promise, one that neither of them dared put into words yet. From the penthouse balcony, the city stretched endlessly, but somewhere in the dark streets below, the idling sedan pulled away, its taillights glowing briefly before vanishing. Inside, Malcolm and Alana remained in their quiet cocoon, unaware that every moment they spent together was tightening the knot of jealousy, and danger, around them. The morning sun poured into the penthouse, but Malcolm was already awake, sitting at the edge of his bed, phone in hand. He had been on a call with his head of security for the past 20 minutes. "I want eyes on her at all times," Malcolm said firmly. "Discreet but effective. And if anyone even looks like they're following her, I want to know before she does." When he ended the call, he turned to find Alana leaning against the doorframe, hair loose, still in his oversized shirt from the night before. "You're making arrangements," she said, not asking. "I'm making sure you're safe," he replied. Her lips curved faintly. "That's not your job." "It is now," Malcolm said without hesitation. Later that day, Alana walked into her shift at the hospital to find Vanessa waiting in the lobby. Dressed in white linen and oversized sunglasses, she looked like she had stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. "Vanessa," Alana greeted, keeping her tone polite. "I thought we might have coffee," Vanessa said smoothly. "There are things I'd like to say without my brother-in-law around." They sat in a small cafe across the street. Vanessa didn't waste time. "You seem nice enough," she began, stirring her cappuccino. But nice doesn't last in Malcolm's world. People in his life tend to have short shelf lives. Alana's gaze didn't waver. "Is that a warning?" "It's a reality check," Vanessa said, smiling faintly. "You can take it however you want." That night, Malcolm returned home to find Alana already in the living room. She told him about the coffee meeting, word for word. His jaw tightened. "She's testing boundaries. And I think it's time we set some of our own." Alana raised a brow. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, stepping closer, "Vanessa doesn't get to decide who's in my life, or how long they stay." Malcolm's hand lingered near hers on the arm of the sofa. "She's been circling me for years," he said quietly. "Since the day Liana died. At first, I thought it was grief, but now I know better." Alana tilted her head. "And what do you think it is?" His eyes met hers, steady and unblinking. "Possession. Not love, not family, possession. And the closer you get to me, the more she'll see you as a threat." Alana didn't flinch. "Then let her. I've dealt with worse than a jealous sister-in-law." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I believe you." He moved to sit beside her fully, their knees brushing. The skyline stretched out behind them in a wash of gold and silver, but Malcolm's focus never left her. "You've brought something into my life I thought was gone," he said. "Hope. And I'm not letting anyone take that from me." The words settled between them, warm and heavy with truth. Alana felt it, the quiet promise, the choice he'd already made. For a long moment, they simply sat there, the hum of the city below and the low light around them creating a cocoon. Alana's head found his shoulder naturally, and his arm came around her, holding her close. No kiss. No rush. Just a steady heartbeat against her cheek, the unspoken vow that they would stand together, no matter who tried to pull them apart. But a few floors down, parked just out of sight of the main entrance, Vanessa sat in the back of a car, eyes fixed on the penthouse. "Find out everything about her," she told the man beside her. "Every weakness. Every secret." Malcolm didn't move for a long time. He kept his arm wrapped around Alana as if that alone could shield her from what was coming. "I've built a life where most people keep their distance," he said finally. "It's easier that way. Cleaner. But with you, I don't want distance." Alana's voice was soft. "And I'm not asking for it." He leaned forward, reaching for the glass of wine on the table, handing it to her before taking his own. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping slowly, the view of Lagos spread out like a tapestry before them. "Whatever Vanessa is planning," Alana said, "she's already lost." Malcolm arched a brow. "How so?" "Because you're here with me," she said simply, a faint smile playing at her lips. Something in his expression shifted, not quite a smile, but a lightening of the shadows in his eyes. He set his glass down, his free hand brushing over hers. The warmth of his touch was steady, grounding. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," he murmured. "Maybe you don't need to deserve me," she replied. "Maybe you just have to let me stay." Below, a faint flash caught Alana's eye, a camera lens, reflecting the light from the penthouse balcony. She tensed. Malcolm noticed immediately. "What is it?" "Someone's watching," she whispered. He was on his feet in seconds, crossing to the balcony, scanning the streets below. But by the time he reached the railing, the flash was gone and the street looked empty. Still, the air felt different now, heavier. Malcolm turned back to her. "We're not alone in this, Alana." The morning began with rain tapping against the penthouse windows, a slow, steady rhythm that made the city look like it was wrapped in mist. Alana stood barefoot in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee, when Malcolm emerged from his study. He held a small, padded envelope in his hand. This was on the front desk downstairs, he said. Alana frowned. From who? No return address. They opened it together at the kitchen. The kitchen island. Inside was a single photograph, glossy, high resolution. Malcolm's stomach tightened as soon as he saw it. It was Liana. The image was time-stamped from the night she died, but she wasn't alone. She was in the passenger seat of a car, Vanessa's car. Alana's hand went to her mouth. Malcolm. The photograph was grainy around the edges, but the driver's face was unmistakable. Vanessa. This can't be right, Malcolm said, though his voice was thin, lacking conviction. Someone sent this to you for a reason, Alana replied. They want you to know. Malcolm set the picture down, rubbing his jaw. And they want me to start asking questions. That evening, Malcolm drove to his private club. His contact, a retired detective, was waiting in one of the back lounges. Where did you get this? The man asked, studying the photo. It came anonymously, Malcolm said. And if it's real, it means my sister-in-law was with my wife the night she died. The detective's expression darkened. Then you'd better be ready. If you dig into this, you're going to turn over stones you can't put back. Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa sat at her vanity, applying lipstick. Her phone buzzed with a message, he has the picture. Instead of panic, a slow smile curved her lips. Good, she murmured. Let's see what he does with it. The city streets were slick with rain when Malcolm pulled into the penthouse garage. His mind had been running in tight, endless circles since leaving the club. When he stepped inside, Alana was curled up on the sofa with a blanket over her legs, a book in her lap. She looked up immediately. What did he say? Malcolm hung his coat, moving toward her. He thinks it's real. And if it is, it means Vanessa was with Liana the night she died. Alana's eyes searched his face. And what does that mean for us? He sat beside her, elbows resting on his knees. It means this isn't just about jealousy anymore. It's about what she's willing to do to keep control. And if she thinks you're a threat. I am a threat, Alana said, cutting him off. Her voice was steady. To the way she's tried to own you. To the lies she's been living with. And I'm not afraid of her. Malcolm looked at her for a long moment, something tightening in his chest. You should be, he said quietly. She reached for his hand, her fingers lacing with his. I'll be careful. But I'm not going anywhere. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. I don't want to lose you. Then don't push me away, she replied. Not now. Not when you need someone on your side. The room felt smaller, warmer, as they sat together. Rain still pattered against the windows, but in here, the world seemed to narrow to the sound of their breathing. Malcolm shifted closer, his arm finding its place around her shoulders. She leaned into him, her head resting against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. They didn't speak again for a long while, letting the closeness be its own answer. Outside, just beyond the building's security cameras, a lone figure stood under a black umbrella, watching the penthouse balcony. The rain masked their presence, but their eyes never left the top floor. And in their pocket was another envelope, this one with more than just a photograph. The rain had cleared by morning, leaving Lagos washed in sunlight. Malcolm was in his study, sorting through business reports, when his phone buzzed. Package at the front desk. No sender. A cold thread of recognition ran down his spine. He went down himself this time, not trusting anyone else to handle it. The envelope was larger than the first, heavier. When he brought it upstairs, Alana was still in the kitchen, barefoot, sipping her tea. What is it? She asked, already seeing the way his jaw had tightened. Another envelope, he said. He tore it open. Inside were a handful of photographs, all recent. Malcolm and Alana at the rooftop lounge. Leaving the hospital. walking hand in hand into his penthouse. The last photo was different. It wasn't taken from a distance. It was of Alana, alone, locking her apartment door one evening, her face in full view, and a red X drawn over her in marker. Alana's breath caught. Malcolm. He didn't answer immediately. He was too busy scanning every detail, looking for something, anything, that would tell him who was behind it. This isn't just a warning, Malcolm said finally. This is a threat. Alana stayed steady. Then we fight it. Together. He shook his head. You're not understanding, whoever this is, they're already inside our world. They know where you live. Where you work. They've been close enough to touch you. Later that day, Malcolm met with his security chief in a private garage. I want her moved, Malcolm said. New apartment. Secure access. Full surveillance. And no one knows the location except us. Understood, the chief replied. But if someone's this determined, moving her won't be enough. Malcolm's gaze hardened. Then we find them first. Meanwhile, across the city, Vanessa was in her sitting room, scrolling through her phone. She stopped on a message thread from an unlisted number. One photo caught her attention, Alana's face, the red X. Her smile was faint but unmistakable. Perfect, she whispered. That evening, Malcolm found Alana on the penthouse balcony, the sunset spilling orange and gold across the skyline. She was quiet, her hands resting lightly on the railing, but he could tell her thoughts were far away. You're moving in here, he said without preamble. She turned to him, one brow arched. That's not really a question, is it? No, he replied evenly. It's the only way I can be sure you're safe. You'll have full security, restricted access, cameras in every vulnerable point. No one gets in without me knowing. Alana studied him for a long moment. And what happens when Vanessa finds out? His jaw tightened. She already knows too much. This won't change that, but it will make it harder for her to get to you. She took a step closer. You're not just protecting me, Malcolm. You're drawing a line. And she's going to take that as a challenge. He let out a slow breath. Then let her. I've been letting her dictate the rules for too long. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the city beneath them. Then Malcolm reached for her hand, pulling her gently into his chest. She didn't resist, letting herself feel the solid warmth of him, the way his heartbeat was just slightly faster than usual. You're not alone in this, she murmured. I know, he said quietly, holding her tighter. Later, as they shared a late dinner in the kitchen, his phone buzzed with a new message. He glanced at it, his expression hardening instantly. It was a short text from an unknown number. She was mine before she was yours. Malcolm set the phone face down, his mind already racing. Not just with suspicion, but with the certainty that this game had just shifted into something far more dangerous. Malcolm didn't tell Alana about the message right away. He didn't want to plant that particular seed in her mind until he knew exactly who had sent it. But Alana, watching him across the kitchen island, knew something had shifted. You're doing that thing again, she said quietly. What thing? The thing where you pretend nothing's wrong so I don't worry. But I'm already worried, Malcolm. He stepped around the counter, cupping her face in his hands. I'm not letting anything happen to you. Her eyes searched his. That's not a promise you can make. It's a promise I'm keeping anyway, he said, his voice low and certain. For a moment, their foreheads touched, the quiet between them heavier than words. They turned in for the night, but Malcolm barely slept. Around 3 a.m. He found himself standing at the balcony, looking out at the city, scanning the streets below for anything out of place. Then he saw it, a lone car idling at the far end of the block, headlights off. He didn't move, didn't reach for his phone. He just stared, and even from that distance, He could feel the weight of someone staring back. In the darkness of the bedroom, Alana stirred, sensing the shift in the air. She walked to the balcony door and touched his arm. "What is it?" "Nothing you need to worry about tonight," he murmured, pulling her into his side. "Go back to bed." But as she leaned into him, eyes closed, Malcolm's gaze stayed fixed on that motionless car, the silent reminder that their fight had only just begun. The next morning, Malcolm stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, the Lagos skyline gleaming under the rising sun. His phone was pressed to his ear. "I need the best surveillance team you've got," he said. "And I want them embedded before sundown." "Targets?" the voice on the other end asked. 1. Vanessa Liana Adeyemi, Malcolm replied. "I want to know every move she makes, every call she answers, every place she visits, but she can't suspect a thing." At the penthouse, Alana was packing a few essentials from her apartment, now fully under Malcolm's security detail. She'd agreed to move in without argument, but her mind was elsewhere. When Malcolm returned, she was arranging her scrubs in one of the guest closets. "You look like a man planning something," she said without looking up. He stepped inside, leaning against the doorframe. "I am. But I need you to trust me enough not to ask for details yet." Alana zipped up her bag. "You're going after her." His silence was all the answer she needed. That evening, Malcolm hosted a private dinner at the penthouse, an invitation-only gathering for a few of his closest business allies. Vanessa was among the guests, arriving in a crimson gown, her smile smooth and disarming. Alana played her role flawlessly, warm and polite, never letting Vanessa see the flicker of suspicion beneath her calm. What Vanessa didn't know was that the dinner table centerpiece, an elaborate floral arrangement, concealed a miniature microphone and camera, recording every word and gesture. Halfway through the evening, Malcolm raised a toast. "To loyalty," he said, his eyes resting on Vanessa just a second longer than anyone else's. Vanessa's glass paused at her lips before she smiled and drank. Across the room, in a private security van parked discreetly 2 streets away, Malcolm's surveillance team monitored the live feed. "Got something," one of the techs murmured. On the screen, Vanessa leaned toward a guest, her lips moving barely above a whisper. The audio crackled, then sharpened. "She won't last long." "Not in my way." Malcolm's hand tightened around his wine glass. It wasn't enough to convict her, yet, but it was a crack in her polished mask. And cracks had a way of widening. The dinner wound down just after midnight. Guests filed out into the warm Lagos night, laughter fading into the hum of the city. Vanessa was among the last to leave, pausing at the door with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You really should have more of these gatherings," she said. "They bring out your better side." Malcolm's answer was a polite nod. "Good night, Vanessa." When the door closed, he stayed still, listening until the sound of her heels vanished down the hallway. In the surveillance van 2 streets over, the team logged every word of her whisper from earlier. The timestamp, the video, the audio. It was all neatly stored, ready to be cross-referenced with other pieces of evidence. "She's careful," one of the techs said. "But she's getting bolder." "Good," Malcolm replied. "That means she's getting sloppy." The next morning, Malcolm and Alana took breakfast on the balcony. She had traded her scrubs for a flowing peach dress, the kind she wore on her rare days off. "You're watching her," she said simply. "Yes. And you're going to push her until she shows her hand." He studied her for a moment. "Do you have a problem with that?" She shook her head, the sunlight catching in her hair. "Just, be careful. People like her don't give up without a fight." Later that day, Malcolm's security chief slipped into his office with a file. "You asked for a scenario to draw her out. This will do it." Inside was a plan so simple it almost felt insulting, but Malcolm knew simplicity was its own kind of bait. It would look like a lapse in security, a perfect moment for Vanessa to act. Malcolm's lips curved faintly. Set it up. That night, Malcolm stood at the penthouse window, Legos glittering beyond the glass. Behind him, Alana moved about quietly, unaware that every step they took now was another stitch in the net closing around Vanessa. But what neither of them realized was that this trap would catch more than just a predator. It would change both of their lives in ways neither could yet imagine. The plan was deceptively simple. Announce that Malcolm would be attending a late-night charity gala across town. Leave Alana alone at the penthouse, with only a skeleton security crew. Make sure Vanessa knew every detail, through carefully placed whispers and half-truths. What Vanessa didn't know was that the penthouse would be crawling with hidden security and surveillance, ready to record every angle. The morning before the gala, Malcolm's head of security ran him through the setup in the secure room. For high-definition cameras in the living room, 2 in the balcony entrance, audio in every major space. The team will be in the building across the street with direct line of sight. And Alana? Malcolm asked. She's fully briefed, but only on the part that keeps her safe. She thinks this is just a precaution while you're out. Malcolm's jaw tightened. He hated keeping her in the dark, but the fewer people who knew the real trap, the better. That evening, Alana stood in the living room, straightening the hem of a soft silk robe, pretending to flip through a magazine. In reality, she was counting the minutes until Malcolm returned. The penthouse felt too still without him. From her vantage point, she could see the faint glow of the city lights, the constant hum of Lagos life. But she couldn't shake the sensation that somewhere out there, someone's eyes were fixed on her. Across the city, Vanessa poured herself a glass of wine, her phone buzzing with a message from an unknown number. He's gone. She's alone. Her lips curved into a slow smile. Perfect. She set the glass down and reached for her coat. Back at the penthouse, Malcolm sat in an unmarked SUV 2 blocks away, watching the building through binoculars. His phone buzzed, a single text from his security chief, "She's on the move." Malcolm's pulse ticked up. "Positions," he ordered. The trap was set. The penthouse lights glowed warm against the night as Alana padded into the kitchen for a glass of water. She'd been restless all evening, pacing the length of the living room, glancing at the clock, wondering when Malcolm would be back from the gala. She didn't hear the elevator at first. The soft ding barely registered, until the door opened. Vanessa stepped out, dressed in black from head to toe, her heels silent on the polished floor. "Well," she said, her voice smooth, "you do make yourself at home." Alana's breath caught, but she stood her ground. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," Vanessa replied, stepping closer. "But I already know the answer. You're exactly where you shouldn't be." In the unmarked van across the street, Malcolm's team was recording everything, the live feed showing Vanessa's every movement. "Hold," Malcolm ordered quietly, watching her approach Alana. "You've been a problem from the start," Vanessa continued, circling her like a predator. "He's mine, you understand. Always has been. Always will be. You're just a phase." Alana's hands curled into fists. "You think love is about possession. That's why he'll never choose you." For the first time, Vanessa's mask cracked, anger flashing sharp and raw. "I already chose for him once," she hissed. "Ask Liana how that turned out." The signal was all Malcolm needed. "Move," he barked. The penthouse door burst open. 2 security operatives swept in, weapons low but ready. "Vanessa Liana Adeyemi," the lead said, "you need to come with us." Vanessa froze for half a heartbeat, then tried to push past. But they were faster, securing her wrists as she spat curses, her gaze locked on Malcolm as he strode in. "You set me up," she hissed. "I gave you a choice," Malcolm said coldly. "You made the wrong one." As they dragged her toward the elevator, Vanessa twisted in their grip, shouting, "She won't last. You hear me, Malcolm? She won't last." The doors closed on her voice. The sudden silence felt heavy. Alana leaned against the counter, the adrenaline ebbing from her body. Malcolm crossed to her, cupping her face. "It's over," he said softly. But Alana's expression was distant, her hand resting over her stomach. "There's something I need to tell you," she whispered. Malcolm's brows knit. "What is it?" She swallowed, her eyes meeting his. "I'm pregnant." The room seemed to tilt around him, the weight of the night doubling in an instant. Reached for her coat. Back at the penthouse, Malcolm sat in an unmarked SUV 2 blocks away, watching the building through binoculars. His phone buzzed, a single text from his security chief, "She's on the move." Malcolm's pulse ticked up. "Positions," he ordered. The trap was set. The penthouse lights glowed warm against the night as Alana padded into the kitchen for a glass of water. She'd been restless all evening, pacing the length of the living room, glancing at the clock, wondering when Malcolm would be back from the gala. She didn't hear the elevator at first. The soft ding barely registered, until the door opened. Vanessa stepped out, dressed in black from head to toe, her heels silent on the polished floor. "Well," she said, her voice smooth, "you do make yourself at home." Alana's breath caught, but she stood her ground. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," Vanessa replied, stepping closer. "But I already know the answer." "You're exactly where you shouldn't be." In the unmarked van across the street, Malcolm's team was recording everything, the live feed showing Vanessa's every movement. "Hold," Malcolm ordered quietly, watching her approach Alana. "You've been a problem from the start," Vanessa continued, circling her like a predator. "He's mine, you understand. Always has been. Always will be. You're just a phase." Alana's hands curled into fists. "You think love is about possession. That's why he'll never choose you." For the first time, Vanessa's mask cracked, anger flashing sharp and raw. "I already chose for him once," she hissed. "Ask Liana how that turned out." The signal was all Malcolm needed. "Move," he barked. The penthouse door burst open. 2 security operatives swept in, weapons low but ready. "Vanessa Liana Adeyemi," the lead said, "you need to come with us." Vanessa froze for half a heartbeat, then tried to push past. But they were faster, securing her wrists as she spat curses, her gaze locked on Malcolm as he strode in. "You set me up," she hissed. "I gave you a choice," Malcolm said coldly. "You made the wrong one." As they dragged her toward the elevator, Vanessa twisted in their grip, shouting, "She won't last. You hear me, Malcolm? She won't last." The doors closed on her voice. The sudden silence felt heavy. Alana leaned against the counter, the adrenaline ebbing from her body. Malcolm crossed to her, cupping her face. "It's over," he said softly. But Alana's expression was distant, her hand resting over her stomach. "There's something I need to tell you," she whispered. Malcolm's brows knit. "What is it?" She swallowed, her eyes meeting his. "I'm pregnant." The room seemed to tilt around him, the weight of the night doubling in an instant.